and welcome to my wrap up of my 75 booked challenge. If you're unaware of what 75 booked is, it's basically this reading challenge where you try and read for 2 45-minute sprints every day. There are some other challenges to go along with it as well, like finishing a bottle of water for each of the sprints that you do, and there's some other ones. I technically only was trying to do the sprint portion of this challenge, which we'll talk about how this whole challenge went in a bit, but in this video I want to sort of wrap up all of the books that I read for this challenge and give you my thoughts on this challenge as a whole, how it went for me, my personal experience, all of that. But first we're going to start with talking about all of the books that I read, what days I finished them on, walk you through how my challenge went. But if you do want more information on these books, I did do individual reviews of them. I have an entire playlist here on my channel that I've titled 75 Booked, so you can see my review of every single one of these books and just general updates about this challenge that I was doing as the challenge went on. But let's go ahead and talk about the books. Also, I do have my little notebook where I wrote everything down on, so if you ever see me looking down, it is to view my notes about this challenge. On day 1 of 75 Booked, I started and also finished What Stalks the Deep by Kingfisher. This is the 3rd book in the series and I gave it 3 stars. Day 2, I started The Night and the Moth by Gillig and I finished it on day 4. Day 5, I started The Vampires of El Norte by Isabel Canas and I finished it on day 8 and I gave this one 4 stars. On day 9, I started 2 books. I started The Glass Castle by Jeannette and also How to Fail at Flirting by Denise. Day 11, I finished How to Fail at Flirting, which I gave 2 stars. Day 14, I finished The Glass Castle, which I gave 3 stars. Day 15, I started and finished Volume 1 of Hunter x Hunter, which I gave 3 stars. Day 16, I technically picked back up The Wise Man's Fear. This is one I had started back in December, and I picked it up again in the middle of January. And day 18 is the first day that I failed this challenge. I did not read anything on this day. For context, I am a full-time college student. I'm very busy with school and sometimes I just don't feel like reading. Sometimes I have other things that I'm doing, like social obligations or just general things like outside of my house, and I just end up not picking up a book. But day 18 was the first and only day that I didn't read anything. Technically, after this point, I stopped tracking if I did both of my 2 45-minute sprints and was just basically logging if I actually read that day. And usually when I do read a lot. Sometimes I was doing more reading than other days, and so I just stopped tracking at the 18-day mark, which it is what it is. I just didn't really care about that at that point since I technically failed the challenge. But by day 27, I finally finished The Wise Man's Fear, which I gave 1.5 stars. This is a big chunky book. It's almost 1,000 pages, so it definitely took me a long time to get through, and it definitely was not worth it. Day 28, I started The Cloisters by Katie Hayes, and I ended up DNFing it on day 30. I did make it a good chunk of the way through, but it just wasn't for me. Day 31, I finished Loud by Drew Afwalo, and on day 34, I finished it and I gave it 3 stars. Day 34 is also when I started Outdrawn by Deanna Gray. Day 35 is when I started Foundation by Isaac Asimov. Day 37 is when I finished Outdrawn by Deanna Gray and I gave this one 4 stars. Day 37 is also when I started My Government Means to Kill Me by Rashid Newson, and I finished it on day 38 and I gave that one 3 stars. I started The Spite House by Johnny Compton on day 39 and I finished it on day 40 and I gave this one 3.5 stars. Day 41 is when I started Out There Screaming, which is an anthology edited by Jordan Peele. Day 44 is when I finished Foundation, which I gave 4 stars. And it's also when I started I'm That Girl by Jordan Childs. Day 46 is when I finished Out There Screaming, which I gave 2.5 stars. Day 47 is when I started Velocity Weapon by Megan E. O'Keefe, and it is also when I started Tradwife by Saratoga Schaefer. On day 48, that's when I finished I'm That Girl by Jordan Childs, which I gave 4.5 stars. On day 50, I finished Tradwife by Saratoga Schaefer, which I gave 5 stars. Day 51, I started Deal with the Devil by Lizzie Strong. Day 55 is when I started Through Gates of Garnet and Gold by Shauna McGuire, and I finished it on day 56 and I gave this one 2.5 stars. On day 57, I finished Deal with the Devil by Lizzie Strong and I gave this one 3 stars. And on this day, I also started Unbuild Walls by Silky Shaw. Day 60, I finished Unbuild Walls, which I gave gave 4 stars. And I also started and finished Sweat and Soap Volume 8, which I gave 4.5 stars. Day 61, I started and finished Sweat and Soap Volume 9, which I gave 4 stars. Day 62, I started and finished Volume 10 of Sweat and Soap, which I also gave 4 stars. And day 63, I started and finished Sweat and Soap Volume 11, which I gave 5 stars. Day 65 is when I finally finished Velocity Weapon, which I gave 3 stars. This is a chunky sci-fi book. And this is also when I started One Night in Heartswood by Emma Denny. Day 66, I started You Won't Forget Me by Maisie Eddings, and I finished it on day 68, and I gave this one 4 stars. On day 70, I finished One Night in Heartswood by Emma Denny, which I gave 2 stars, and it is also the day I started Natural Beauty by Ling Ling Huang. Day 71 is when I started Everyone's Seen My Tits by Keely Hazel. Day 72, I finished Natural Beauty, which I gave 3.5 stars. Day 74 is when I finished Everyone's Seen My Tits, which I gave 4 stars. And day 75 is when I started Book Lovers, which I did not finish during this challenge. So in 75 days, I managed to read 27 books. I started another one, Book Lovers by Emily Henry, and I did have 1 DNF. January, I did read 7 books. February, I read 8 books, but where this challenge ended so far in March, I have read 12 books. Overall, I'm really proud of my reading that has come out of this challenge. Obviously, it's basically from the first of the year till currently. I think I technically started this challenge January 5th, if I'm remembering correctly. But I do have to say that me and my personality as a reader, I do not like timed sprints necessarily. Sometimes if I know I want to read and I know I want to not have any distractions, I'll put on like reading sprints on YouTube. But timing myself reading just in general is not something that motivates me to read and makes it feel like a chore. This challenge in itself kind of just made reading into a chore and just having to track everything. I love a good spreadsheet. I do track everything that I read, but tracking specifically like my sprints and making sure that I'm reading every day is not something I necessarily want to push myself to do. I also never want to force myself to read if I'm not in the mood to read. For me, I just find that that's how I end up in a reading slump. And while technically during this challenge I read for 74 of the 75 days, I'm pretty sure I did not hit 2 45-minute sprints each day. As I mentioned in the beginning, some days I just don't read a lot, and some days I'm just really in a reading mood and I read for like hours at a time. And that's just who I am as a reader. I just don't like forcing myself to do my hobbies because that's what reading is. It is a hobby. It is my main hobby. It is my main form of entertainment. I don't really watch movies and shows that often. If I am going to watch something, I'm usually watching YouTube. And again, I am a full-time student. I don't necessarily have all the time in the world to be reading, and I know that's what this challenge is to carve out those pieces of your day to focus on your challenge. And I know that 75 Booked is a bookish take on 75 Hard, which I believe is a workout challenge, and I can understand having to force yourself to work out if you're not someone who works out all the time. Just the way I understand 75 Booked is a way to push people to read who don't really read every day and want to get into reading. Like, I understand what it's for, and it's not for me, and that is okay. I do usually read every day, at least like a page or something. Again, I have a whole booktube channel. Obviously, I make videos about books. I like to talk about books, so I'm constantly reading books, but as like a challenge, this was not the challenge for me, and that is okay. I did also do this challenge with my friend whose channel I will link below if you want to check out. We both did this challenge, and I think that was an even better way for me to sort of keep myself accountable, is having someone else to talk to about this challenge and all that. I think if I was doing this challenge on my own and wasn't obviously talking to my friend about it, but also was not posting videos about me doing this challenge, I think I probably just would have quietly like gave up on this challenge and never thought about it again. But you know, I stuck it through and that was fun. One thing I think I did get out of this challenge is that I was doing individual book reviews in the form of shorts. Like I mentioned, I have a whole playlist of those that I will have linked somewhere, but I wanted a way to keep track of what I was reading. I did technically start off by doing these videos every single day, and that just got to be too much, so I was just doing them as book reviews and filming the videos as I finish a book, which I think worked out a lot better. And one of my goals I had for this year was to overall just get better at reviewing books, because I feel like my channel wasn't exactly giving all the most information about books, and I was just telling you that I read them without giving my full thoughts on them, which yes, I get the irony of that considering the first half of this video was me just telling you that I read books without any information on them. But again, I did individual videos for them. I also did my monthly wrap-ups and all that. Some of these books were in reading vlogs, so I talked about these books a lot, and I do think this challenge helped give me a place to really do individual book reviews, which I really appreciate. Whether or not my book reviewing skills has gotten any better, I don't really know. I am not like the best communicator out there, even though I'm trying. I am definitely someone who stumbles over my words and uses a lot of filler words, and I'm trying to get better at that. But I really do enjoy my shorts of individual book reviews, and I think that is something that I will continue doing going forward. But other than that, I don't know if there's anything that I necessarily got out of doing this challenge. And I think for me personally, I think I would rather just do like readathons and like having like a month dedicated to like fulfilling certain prompts or doing certain things where there's a whole community behind it. And it just, to me, it's a lot more fun. It's a lot more of a funner way to pick books that I want to read, and doesn't necessarily make things out to be a chore, but instead a fun game. I think that's what I prefer more than something where you just have all these rules and you're just doing these like timed reading sprints every single day and you're making sure you're reading every day. I just feel like it takes the fun out of doing your hobby. But again, I do understand that this challenge is probably more leaning towards getting people who don't read all the time to read more. And so yeah, I just don't think this challenge was for me. But like I said, I did read a lot. I found that I like doing individual book review shorts here. And yeah, I also hope you guys enjoyed following along on my journey of this. Hopefully it was somewhat entertaining. Hopefully this video was somewhat entertaining so you can see when I start reading books and when I finish them, and how I'm sometimes reading multiple books at once. But yeah, I hope that just gave you a little bit of insight into my reading habits and stuff. And let me know in the comments if you have done this challenge, if you want to participate in this challenge. What are your thoughts on this whole thing? And just thank you so much for making it this far into the video. If you enjoyed, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye!